Welcome back to the Modern Hippie podcast. I'm joined today by Dan Mendilow, who is a life coach and healer, founder of the Alchemy Method and quantum magnetics. For the last 7 years, Dan has been ranked as LA's #1 life coach on Yelp and someone who is new to my field. But I am so excited about the alliance we have formed and how we have been getting to know each other over the last month and a half, 2 months, maybe even, and supporting each other in these transformations and these shifts we've been going through. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Barrett.
Yeah, it has been such a pleasure to get to know you. Also, because for those of my listeners who are in the Blue Morpho community, Dan has miraculously been down to Blue Morpho and sat with Hamilton. And I didn't know that about you when we first connected. And so that's been such a beautiful blessing to have Blue Morpho fam nearby now.
Yeah, it's a wonderful connection point.
Well, we'll dive into more of that. But the first thing I really want to talk about is you were in a cult. How did that happen?
Oh, man. You know, and it's so strange because it's almost 10 years ago now, and it kind of feels like a dream. Like, every once in a while, I have to think about, like, did that actually happen, right? And I still am friends with people who I met there, so I know that wasn't just a delusional fantasy. That was, like, a real year and a half of my life that actually went down. So I'll give you a bit of a background so you know who I was before, because I think this would be something else had I been a religious zealot or a super spiritual seeker or whatever. I hated religion and I thought God was nonsense. Okay. I was raised to look at spirituality as a comforting tool, like a safety blanket for a species of creature who just had a hard time as existentially dealing with the idea that the universe was utterly random and there is no point to anything. That's how I looked at it. And I looked at religion as a power dynamic that took hold of something beautiful that people created and used it to dominate the
Mm,
world. So this is who I was before. And I was still very depressed. I was born suicidally depressed, literally born that way. Started my life in trauma and multiple massive traumas since, and a life of trauma, and got into psychology to try to figure myself out. And when that didn't give me answers, I got weirder. And NLP and hypnotherapy were starting to emerge in the US, is not nearly as popular or as commonplace as they are now. And so I got into that and started getting results and learning that, okay, transformation can exist. It doesn't need to be 6 years of therapy to feel a little bit better. But I started getting my certifications and realizing I had skills in it and I could help other people. So I quit my job and became a life coach. And the guy who was supposed to show me the ropes and promised he'd show me how to build a business turned out to not be able to deliver on that promise. And I was quickly running out of money. I got a big chunk of change to buy a house from my great aunt, and I spent it all because there was just barely any money coming in. And I was freaking out, on the verge of having a nervous breakdown. And one of my buddies from college reconnected me with another dude I knew in college who had a history of helping a couple of life coaches build very successful businesses. Long and short of it is he didn't help me at all. But along that, one of the conversations, I was like, Dan, you seem to be really stressed out. And can I use whatever
yeah.
language comes to
Again,
mind?
again.
That's okay. Good. I'm like, yeah, no shit, dude. I'm spending every penny I've got, and it seems like everybody's advice is dog shit. There's nothing. I don't know what I'm doing, and I'm losing my mind. I'm gonna be homeless. Said, well, go to this temple. talk to the sannyasis, the priests, Hindu priests there. He said, this organization changed my entire life. I thought I was losing my mind, and I met their guru. He put his hand on my head and I healed.
Mm.
And in the back of my mind, I'm like, cool. So you're fucking insane and this is nonsense, but I have nothing to do today. And if I stay at home, I think I'm going to shoot myself. So let's go to the temple and see what these Hindu gods have to say about this. Right? Not exactly the most healthy way to approach anybody, there's like depths of cynicism. And I went there and talked to a lot of the other people who were there, not just the sannyasis, just the people who were milling around. And they were all telling me about this program. You got to go to this program. It's 3 weeks. The next one was going to be in Thailand. It was going to cost $15,000 for the program itself. And then I had to fly there. And then there's opportunity cost, right? There's no way for me to generate any money while I'm there. Like, cool. So you're asking me to empty my bank account. Tell me why. What have you noticed as a change between before this program and after? And everybody kept on giving me these kind of nonsense answers. I feel more peaceful.
Mm.
I'm more calm. I'm like, cool. A heavy dose of CBD will do that. That's not going to cost you $15,000. Why? But they had this quality. Every person who went to this program had a quality about them that I couldn't identify. It was just different. And then I was waiting for one of the sannyasis to talk to them about, well, why is it that I cannot get a grip of my business? And walked into this room full of idols and gods. And there's this corner where their guru had a bunch of his pictures and padukas. If you don't know, there's like wooden sandals, like wooden flip-flops, like a bunch of different things that this guy has worn. And as I approached it, I felt static in my body. I didn't know what this was. Now I know what I was feeling was energy, that electromagnetic signal. I didn't know what it was. I just knew that when I crossed over a certain threshold of proximity to this guy's stuff, my body started tingling. And as I got closer and closer, it tingled more and more and more throughout my whole body. And when I backed away, it lessened. And I tested it because I thought, maybe whatever. Maybe there's one thing. Maybe there's like a weird thing in the room. I don't know. So I backed up and walked closer, backed up, went closer, back and forth, and it saw that this was like a force field, like a radius around this guy's stuff, and had a definite boundary that I could locate with my eyes closed. And I had a real dilemma here because I'm also an incredibly curious person. And ever since I was a kid, I was kind of like an atheistic, if that's a word, seeker. Like I wanted to know truth, right? But I just had a very different way of looking at it than I do now. But here I was confronted with people who were giving me unsatisfactory answers, but had a very interesting quality about them. And then this experience. And my choices as I saw it was I either give them all my money, like all of my money, and I go find out what this is. Or I go home and I drink vodka until I forget about it. Just bleach my brain out. And I was talking with one of the sannyasis, and the sannyasi said something that to me sounded like absolute nothing, just junk. Right? Said, listen, if you fill out this form, this intention form, you sign up for the program, you talk to the guru on the phone, he'll bless you, and the money will appear in your account.
Sounds
And
convenient.
I thought, yeah, very convenient. Too
Yeah.
convenient. Too easy. Like bullshit. But desperation does amazing things. And so I filled out the form. I signed up for a call with a guy. I signed up for the program. I gave them my credit card. That freaked me out. I talked to this guy for 5 seconds on the phone. He blessed me. And a week later, I made $15,000 on the dot.
Wow.
Yeah.
Synchronistic as fuck.
Yeah. And that was a moment for me because I'm just gathering bizarre experiences one after another. Like, okay, what the fuck am I doing?
Mhm.
And I went to Thailand, and that story is bananas. I could fill this hour and a half up with just that one first retreat that I was with this group with, which included the the resort that we were at turned out to be not a resort, but just a front for the Thai mafia who tried to kidnap us. We needed to get the US embassy to help us extract ourselves from there.
What?
So that was part of the story. Another part of the story is sitting with people for sometimes 6 to 7 hours a day, uh, over 1,000 no, I'm sorry, the first one was, 721 people. I don't know why I remember that number specifically. The second one was over 1,000. But here, 700 people in a room putting on blindfolds and showing each other, numbers or shapes or sometimes even elaborate pictures. And some people could see as clear as if they had nothing over their eyes at all.
Mm.
And sometimes I could. And we had these processes with this guru, and I had no idea what was going on with them. In the first few, I didn't feel anything, and I thought maybe this is a gigantic mistake. And then there was a session in which everything changed. Eyes closed in the room. This guy's doing whatever, which is very little. It seemed like he would just like move his arm a little bit. He would stamp a foot, look at you and smile, and the room would erupt.
Mm.
There were people laughing, insane laughter, screaming, crying, singing, dancing, shaking on the ground, rolling all over the place. It, it was wild in that room. Insane. And me with my eyes closed, feeling insane heat, then cold, movement in my body, feeling like I was going to expand outward until splitting or shrink inward until nothing. And it was, I think, an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours long. And after that, something really bizarre started happening
Oh, more bizarre.
because I would walk around and with like no warning, my vision would go black and white and kind of staticky, almost like I was trying to steal cable like back in the 90s. And it would pop after some amount of time. And then it looked like I could see the world. Now, this is way before 1080p and 4K. Okay, so I'm gonna give you like as I saw it back then, I'm gonna date the shit out of myself right now. It was like looking at HD.
Mm.
Everything was HD. I could hear everything. I could feel everything. I could see perfectly. And this would last for a little bit, and then it would snap back into standard definition. And it was really odd and really upsetting, and then it would happen again, and then every time it happened, I would stay in HD longer, and then one day, it just didn't snap back. It just stayed there, and from then, I could feel energy, and I could experience people's thoughts, and I had visions of the future, and I started becoming who I am now. And what I really think happened was, I think I had some form of Kundalini awakening in that room. And I was grappling with the idea that God was real,
Mm.
that spirituality was real, that energy was real. And I had to rethink literally everything. And it was too much. It was too much for me to process, and I would overload. And then finally, when I accepted it, boom, everything changed. And I became a seeker.
Wow.
So, yeah.
There's so much I wanna unpack in that. What comes up.
And that's just the beginning.
Yeah, it sounds like we're just in the 3-week program, so
Oh, you haven't even gotten
oh,
through the 3-week program.
wow.
That was in the first few days.
Mhm. And so
Yeah.
because of that experience, you decided how much time did you end up spending in this cult?
A year and a half. So, I knew it was a cult, okay? I didn't know it was a dark cult. I discovered that later, and that's why I ended up leaving, and I told my parents, "Listen, the moment this becomes, like, too weird or negative, I'm out." But what I saw in the group is people literally aging in reverse. I saw people who wore glasses their entire lives throw them away. And it was a year and a half, right? So I saw them again
Sure.
and they never wore glasses again. I saw so many people in that group making loads of money. When I joined, I started making loads of money. I started making six figures after being like a few weeks away from not being able to pay rent. To doing that and having a thriving business out of nowhere was insane. I'm going to stay with these guys. And we learned how to move things with our mind. We learned distance viewing. We learned body scanning. We learned healing. We learned all sorts of things. And I thought I found a solution. And then things got really dark. Indiana Jones kind of dark, but that's that's a little bit down the
I
road.
mean, I can certainly see why you would initially stay with all of these incredible things happening. I mean, you're describing abilities that I myself would really love to train in, especially like remote viewing and those sorts of things. And so at what point did you start getting the hits that, "Oh shit, this is actually dark and negative?"
So there were a few hints throughout. One of them was that there were so many people who were in the cult who didn't want to talk about anything other than the guru. They didn't read anything other than his books.
Mm.
And the more people were in it, the more they just wanted to be him. And to me, this was a red flag that even then, I knew that whatever path, if it's a real solution, it would take you closer to yourself, not closer to someone else. And it was strange, like, a lot of these processes that he said would heal us of things didn't seem to do anything. And he would give us these necklaces to wear with Rudraksha beads on them and his picture, and he gave us all these things to put in our homes and said that it would increase our spiritual energy and our connection with him so that we could use the powers. But when I wasn't in a temple or in his ashram, I didn't really have access to those powers. And there was a part of me that got very anxious when he would give me things. Like I didn't want to put the necklace on, and I didn't know why.
Mm.
And later on, close to the end, there was something about him I really didn't like. I had a hard time looking at him. And I had a picture of him in my room and didn't want to look at it, turn it around, wondering, what is it? There was something that is triggering an anxiety in me. And him also starting to talk about how we shouldn't receive Reiki or energy healing from anybody else, that we shouldn't even meditate. And these were very weird, especially because he, in his earlier days, wrote this huge book about meditation.
Mm.
And when I looked at his earlier stuff, his earlier pictures, he seemed like a different human being. He was radiating light.
Mm.
And when I looked at him then, it was muddy and dark and kind of spooky. And I started talking with another one of my friends who had left. And she was telling me, like, look, this is all synthetic enlightenment. It's not real. It's like taking a drug. You know, we take big doses of medicine and we think, I've made it. But we always come back down. It's not real. You can use that space to do amazing things, but by itself, it's just a visit. And so we weren't actually growing. And what I had realized, and especially as I was talking with my friend, is that this guy was a bright and shining light, used to be. And he got hijacked by what I think is a greater shape-shifting demon. And I could see it. And it looked like this, almost like this crazy worm with a million teeth.
Mhm.
And it was really scary. And when I saw, they called them the Gurukul kids, he would tell people, bring your children over here, have them live with me for years. And I would look at these kids and they looked like they were empty,
Mm.
soulless. And I started looking at the people who were really in the cult for a long time and they looked like dolls, pristine on the outside. But if I looked into their pupils, it scared the shit out of me.
Mhm.
It was like there was very little of them there anymore. And I realized what he was doing with all these things, trinkets and stuff that he was giving us is he was siphoning off life force and using that to help us do these powers. But what use are these powers? It's all ego. It was a cult of ego. Think about it. Money, beauty, powers. We're better. And he would tell people, look, if anybody says any bad word about me or the cult, you need to attack them violently, like a lion.
What?
And I thinking, this is just not right. This is then going darker and darker and darker. And so there was a day where I was doing a puja. He had us do pujas to him every morning, and I hadn't done it in a couple days. I did a puja, and it felt like someone put a cork in my third eye right here, and it hurt. So, "Gah, get in there." And that's the day that I decided I'm out. And I threw all of his stuff away. And what I did not know is that many of the people who leave the cult have something awful happen to them right after.
Really?
2 days after my friend left, her house on all floors, all of her waters, the pipes burst, and her entire house was flooded by 4 inches of water.
Very odd.
2 days after I left, my brand new mini S-Class that I got tricked out and totally customized to me and was parked in a tandem parking lot under my building, garage locked, totally surrounded by other cars, gone. And it really freaked me out because I thought, well, if he can get me here, I'm not safe anywhere in the world. And I had a week of just living in terror. After that, it was totally cool. I think what it really was is just a shock. So like, see, no, you're safer with us. Come back to us. Come back. Come back. And because I didn't, it finally released, and I was out.
Wow. Well, I'm so glad you got out. It's
Same.
very interesting analysis of what you experienced there. It's like in the beginning, almost the energetics were so strong that it triggered removal of the blockages on people and opening, like you said, of that like Kundalini awakening and enlightenment. And and so then all of these powers come online, but then he's siphoning off more power from others to be able to activate and hold that. Terrifying. Had to be terrifying.
Yeah, it was. That's how cults operate, you know? It's like any good cult, just like any good lie, will start with the truth. We'll start with something very real because then we keep, well, that was real. That was real. I have evidence. That was real. So this has got to be real, right? And yeah, it just wasn't.
Mm. And so where did your quest for seeking to expand your consciousness, seeking to heal, you had mentioned that's what kind of got you into psychology. Where did your spiritual quest begin? Was it sort of with this cult or was it after then once you saw what was possible?
It started with the cult. That was me waking up to spirituality being real and realizing that there must be more. Because if this is what we can do in this dark cult, what can we do if we play in the light? And I remember throwing away all of his stuff and just committing. I'm done. I'm going to find source on my own. And that was the first time I could hear my guides.
Mm.
And it sounded like they erupted. They were like a whole football stadium just cheering, like big applause and just a parade that I was where I was. And I committed then to find the truth on my own. And with help, of course, no one does anything on their own, but not through someone else, not connecting through a guru or anything like that. It was up to me to explore it.
And so that was roughly, you said 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Where did your journey take you after that? Where did you find solace for what you were experiencing or healing? Or, you mentioned the multiple traumas, and
Mhm.
I'm familiar with more of that, so I'm leading you there.
Yeah. Hmm. I worked with so many different practitioners and mentors after that. I wanted to like taste the rainbow of healing and see what was out there. So I got energy healing sessions. I worked with a Mayan oracle. Actually worked with a few different kinds of oracles. Oh. I worked with healers from all sorts of backgrounds and made progress, but nothing really hit me like shamanic medicine. Nothing really did that. And the wild thing is I was doing all these healings and so many people calling me a shaman, which I am not, but so many people calling me that and saying, even a lot of my healers saying, like, look, dude, you've been a healer for so many lifetimes. You've been a shaman in so many lifetimes. This is why your life is the way it is. If you look at a shamanic path, my life is so parallel. All I'm not doing is like living with a tribe and actually going through it. And I don't want to do that. But when I found shamanic medicine, even though it was utterly terrifying, my first time with Bufo scared the shit out of me.
Mm.
I've never been more afraid in my entire life. Didn't know I could be that scared. But there was something that felt like home. There was something that felt like I knew this. I know this. There is something for me here. And I did quite a bit, and I do quite a bit. My favorites especially are combo, and I'm a maniac with combo. I'll do 3 days in a row, and I go after it. I'm usually on the floor, just cannot move, covered in sweat because I'm there to release lifetimes. And it was an interesting thing because throughout my entire life, and it was just very difficult for me, especially when I was really depressed, because any readings that I'd gotten, including Mayan astrology and tropical astrology, all sorts of things, were just leading to like, look, dude, this is the life in which you heal lifetimes of karma. You release lifetimes of wounding, not just of yours, but all of your ancestors. This is a big, important life. And me, as a suicidally depressed guy who could barely keep his own life together, felt like this was a burden that was unfair, that was unrealistic. It was too much for me to ask to be of myself, to be able to do that. I didn't even know how to heal myself. I'm going to heal other people's stuff or past life things. And as I got into shamanic medicine, I realized how much of this life is actually affected all by previous ones. Just a laundry list of insane samskaras. If you're listening to this and don't know what that is, that's essentially a past life trauma, but one that is so painful that it can track you. It can go with you for dozens, hundreds, thousands of lives and hides. And going through this process where I am now of combining everything that I know, and working with exceptionally high level healers and mentors using, I look for the weirdest stuff. That if you're an insanely talented healer and you do something I've never heard of, I'm curious. And that has been instrumental for me. And sitting with ayahuasca and working with these big medicines and learning how to journey and learning how to unravel a samskara.
Mm.
My own healing journey made me the healer that I am. All of the tools that I use have been used with me, and I've learned them from there. And so this journey has not only helped me dive into myself more and heal in wild ways, and also get to the point where I can finally see the honor in having an insanely difficult and painful life in which it's training. This is training. This is one of the reasons why I don't want to become a shaman, because that training gets even more intense. And I've already almost died many, many times. I'm kind of like done with it. Unless, of course, source tells me that it's my time and I don't have a choice in that. One of the things that my journey has really led me to is a level of surrender and faith in which, even sometimes begrudgingly, and I'm working on that too, I go along. Spirit tells me what to do, I do it. It very much is jump, how high, where, I don't care. Jump off this building, fuck it, let's go. And my life has turned into a lot of these leaps. A lot of those leaps into, I have no idea where I'm going. I don't know what's happening. It seems illogical, it seems irrational, but when I follow, it seems that source guides me to the healing that I need. Transformative healing that has allowed me to explore myself and explore consciousness and explore past lives and explore the reasons that I'm alive here now, despite so many times of trying to end it in my previous days. And it's been a magical ride.
I love what you're talking about with regards to exploring just the rainbow of methodologies available really to everyone. And I think most people, or many people, don't embark and don't diversify because there's a level of fear there, a fear of the unknown. And I think it's just what's outside of our comfort zone. It's just what's outside of the known that will begin to truly unlock us. The amount of times I've been presented with something that I a couple days prior would have been like, that's going to be something bullshit. And then tried it and had an incredible experience or insane result that caused a shift in me, and it is truly mind blowing. The number of times that's happened. And my mentor Hamilton Souther the other day was saying, when you decide to embark on the shamanic healing path, when you decide to pursue experiencing shamanic healing, not as a shaman, but as the recipient, you just never quite know what's going to work for you. You never quite know which guru, healer, mentor, shaman is going to be the right fit until you try, and which one's going to have the energy or the system or the healing that really causes that radical shift. And it is the pursuit of that path to unlock them that will cause the transformation. And so I'm curious what advice you have for someone who's interested in exploring and going down these that adventurous paths with their own healing of trauma. What advice do you have?
I would say cultivate a very intimate relationship with your intuition. And there are all sorts of routes to that. Human design offers a really practical, easy to follow way to see what your dominant intuition forms are and how to listen and trust them. Because when we step into this world, I think the more we use our minds, Unless, of course, you're one of the rare exceptions in human design. There's a small percentage of the population that is meant to be up here in the mind. Most of us are not.
I think I'm one of them.
Most of us, the more maybe. And for most of us, the more we're up here, the more screwy things get. And my greatest healing has come from listening to my intuition and not knowing why it would tell me to hire this person, go to this retreat, work on this week instead of the others, and schedule a retreat with a shaman in a certain date, but not another. Like, why? I don't make decisions. I try to make as few decisions as possible for myself. I use intuition for as much as possible, letting source dictate what I'm doing. And if it says no, don't work with that person. Don't work with that person now. Even if I really want to and I love their content and I love everything about them, it's a no. And so many times I've hired someone and not really known why. I have an idea, but that's a mind idea. And then when I get to working with them, very often I'll realize, oh, it was for a completely different reason I did not see at all. I'll give you an example of that. So before this year began, I hired a wonderful healer and oracle. Her name is Carissa, and now she works with Gaia and doing incredible things there. So I think I might have been like one of her last clients, which is really cool. And I don't know why. It was so weird. When I first engaged with her content on Instagram, I realized I do not really like her content. I don't really vibe with it. But intuition told me, something told me, keep this person around. Like, follow her. There will be a time where you're going to need her. Cool. So a couple years later, this is the beginning of before the beginning of this year, I hired her. And I told her, hey, this is what I think we'll be doing. We didn't do any of that. None of it. I don't even know why I said any of it. Because even as I was writing it, I'm like, I don't know. I'm just guessing in the dark. And then the most disruptive and difficult year of my entire life began.
Mm.
And she was a wonderful ally and very supportive as I was going through what felt like madness. What it really was an entity that attached to me the first time I did Bufo, which was very strange because I had two incredibly qualified shamans working with me, which also let me know that was something that needed to happen.
Mm.
This was a gift of a process, even though it ruined my life a few times because I had it for years and didn't know. And when it started raging, my life tanked. Just about everything in my world broke. And if you've never had a very loud, destructive entity attached to you, uh, it's very hard to understand. Imagine it sort of like a mini possession. My mind was filled with the most awful thoughts. And it took all the will I had to not just drive into traffic when it told me to. When I had those sudden uncontrollable urges that were not mine, it would flood my body with the most intense despair and depression and powerlessness and these insane emotions. And Carissa really helped me with that. But even more importantly, she connected me with her healer who helped her with her entity. And Wendy has been one of the more important healers I've ever met. And through her, I've been able to heal some of the biggest samskaras that I've ever encountered. And when we removed, so this loud ass entity that was attached to me was hooked into a samskara that gave me some of the most disempowering belief systems I've had in this life. And it brought them all to the surface so I could see them, even though it was very difficult to experience them because it felt like I had just no control of my life. I couldn't do anything, utterly powerless. My worst patterns up there. And when we removed them, it was like they flipped. So getting this entity attached was a gift. It was a way for me to find these things. It was a way for me to find a healer. It was a way for me to find these samskaras. And intuition told me the path to get it healed. And it was a magical process watching that because I didn't know. And the moment Carissa said, Wendy, I'm like, cool, I need to work with her. Give me your information right now. And I had no idea who this person was. But immediately, like, cool, we're setting up a session. Don't worry about it. It's going to be amazing. And I just knew. And intuition told me what to work on. And intuition told me when to hire, like when to schedule sessions. And it all worked beautifully. And I feel that is the strongest way because how many healers are there, right? How many coaches are there? How many ayahuasqueros are there in the world? You're going to try to do this with your mind. You're going to be at it all day. You have other things to do. And how do you know? Why do we make decisions ourselves when we can tap into our souls, higher selves, call it whatever, tap into source and get access to vision and wisdom that we're not privy to, that we're not consciously aware of? That's how you make amazing decisions. And every single time that I've done that, in retrospect, I have been so grateful that I took that leap and made these decisions, even though I didn't know why at the time.
Yeah, I think you're really highlighting that ability to sense that fuck yes versus that fuck no. And I think a lot of people would really benefit from getting out of their heads and going, "Oh, well, I don't know." Like it's actually much easier than that. It's a fuck yes or it's a fuck no. Like really lean into what your body is saying and listen. And what an incredible journey. And so you have been going through it this year. This sort
Yes.
of well, we'll touch on it a little bit, but like this incredible death and rebirth of who you are as you've been healing and digging into some scaras and just giving yourself spaciousness. What is it like when your identity in a sense is sort of shattered?
There are stages that I've experienced so far. And let me preface this because this is part of the what it's like. So on the last ceremony that I had with ayahuasca with Hamilton Souther, and wow, his work, talk about a living legend. That guy's like built in a lab to do this work. For real, for real. Like that's he was just constructed to deliver these insane ceremonies.
Mhm.
And I went really big. And I asked ayahuasca to upgrade me in every single way, my gifts, my nerves, my brain, my body, my identity, all of it, so that I can serve the way I am meant to serve, that I believe I'm meant to serve in a very big way, to have big influence. And not for me. I don't care. I want to do deep work with people. I want to have a beautiful impact on the world. I don't care if my name is associated with it. It's just what I want to do with my time. It's the only thing I'd like. It's by far and away the most important thing in my life. Everything else is a very far second, and that includes the most important people and things in my life. Like I want to serve, help me serve. And the purge then felt insane. It felt like my soul was purging, and I think what I did was I purged an identity. And Aya told me that I would have the influence that I meant to have because I'll write a book. And in writing the book, I'll put myself through a spiritual awakening, and then I will innovate consciousness. And I believe that to mean I'll innovate a way to connect with consciousness. And that leads me into this year, where I know a lot of us, especially those of us in the healing professions and who are more spiritually inclined, have had a ruckus year, a very difficult year. And that's challenging. This year, God, at first I had no idea what was happening. And the intensity was so severe that I'm just grateful that I had done all the healing work that I had done beforehand, because I think I might have ended it. It was so intense and I was so out of my mind. But I knew what Aya told me, and I figured maybe this is it. Maybe I asked for this. And that helped. Believe it or not, just that helped. And I know that pain is a teacher. Pain is our greatest teacher. I believe there is no change, there is no healing, there is no growth without pain. And this has happened to me, and this has happened with a lot of my clients. The walk through hell always ends in heaven. Always. And it might be a long walk. But for me, what I've noticed is the intensity of the pain is usually matched in size, quality, intensity, whatever, of the gift on the other side. And I held on to that for dear life, thinking, okay, here is a trial. This is a lesson. This is a test. And I might not know what it is right now. I might not know what I'm supposed to be learning or why this is happening. But there has to be a reason. This cannot just be some random occurrence. And that really helps, because at first there was a phase of massive destruction. And the way that I think about that is, when we fill our lives with friends, activities, habits, coping mechanisms, goals, dreams, material possessions, everything, it's like having a full Etch-a-Sketch. And what I asked for was a massive upgrade. Well, how are you going to add to a full Etch-a-Sketch? You need to clear that baby out. And the universe shook my Etch-a-Sketch hard. And that is a violent process. And it was incredibly violent. And it was awful. I won't try to sugarcoat that. That was terrible and lasted for much of the year. And even still, as I'm continuing the process, when I get into a samskara, when I get triggered, it's no little thing anymore. It's like little things don't really get me. When I get triggered, it's a big deal. It's a collapse. It's a shattering. It's a breaking. I've experienced my heart shattering into a million pieces this year. And it's brutal. And I just had to let myself break and realize that there is no fighting this. There is no resisting this. And that may sound awful, until what I realized was, well, if I can't fight it, I'm just going to stop trying. And I fell into deeper levels of surrender and acceptance than I've ever encountered before. And there were months where I got 2 to 3 hours of sleep every night and I just couldn't function. Listening to an audiobook was overwhelming. Watching TV sometimes was overwhelming. And I could not move. I could not get up. So I stopped trying. And it's not giving up per se, but it's just, okay, this is it. This is what it is. What can I learn in this? I'm here. I can't get out of here. What can I learn? What can I gain? And I think that process snapped any other control or idea of control I may have had about my life. And I joked a lot about, like, oh, my hands are not on the wheel. Yeah, for real. I'm not even in the fucking car now. I don't know where I am.
Ghost riding the whip.
Ghost riding the whip. Yeah. And that helped. Really. It helped a lot, because I think we're taught, I'm gonna just say for me, I one way or another was taught that you make your life happen. You construct it. You want something to happen, you make it happen. You manifest that shit. You work hard. You don't like something, you devote your life to changing it. You build your life with force and will. And I gave all of that up and along for the ride now. And that helped so much, Barrett. And I'm still chasing the places where I resist and where I'm not immediately in surrender. When I brace for impact because I know something is going to hurt, it's still resistance. And following that down until what I started noticing was I don't really have many goals anymore. I don't really have dreams. I gave them all up. And not in a sad way. It's like I placed them on the altar. I gave them to source. These are mine coming from a small-minded view of societal conditioning and family conditioning and coping and everything. What are my goals in the face of source's plans? Small, tiny little things. And I don't even know if they're mine. And I started looking at all these things that I felt like I was losing and started wondering if I was losing anything at all. Maybe I was losing shackles that I thought were goals. Like in the beginning of the year, I went to the Akashic Records and asked for what can I do to help myself go through whatever is coming this year? And the answer was relieve yourself of the emotional dependence on making money.
Mm.
And so I started working on that. And so when my income collapsed, I was okay. Fortunately, Source had prepared me for a while and I have a good amount of savings because I wouldn't make big purchases unless my intuition told me yes. And I let go and divorced my concept of success from the amount of money I made. And I started looking at the other attachments and letting go of those. And that really helped because then if I didn't make any money, cool, no problem. I mean, it would be awesome if I did, but all right, fine. And if I couldn't see friends, okay, fine. I had to leave friends, cut them out. Okay, fine. People have known my entire life. Okay, fine. Let it go. God, take it all. Take it all. There was something that I vowed before I ever sat with my first real shamanic medicine. And I had a conversation with Source and I said, listen, if everything that I know about myself has to burn so that I can become who I'm meant to be, who you want me to be in this life, let it burn. Let it all go. And that's what happened. And it's wild because I'm in this place now. I think I'm really walking into the void, this in between space of who I was and what I thought was important and what I liked, what I wanted to do, and letting all of that go. It's challenging for me to even think if you ask me what was important to me last year, I don't even know anymore. It's slipping away like a dream. But I don't have what's coming yet. I don't see this next identity. So here, what I'm navigating is sometimes a very uncomfortable place of emptying out and learning to be okay with that, with them really not knowing. And a lot of people experience this when they leave a job and they don't have another job lined up, or they break up with someone and they don't have another partner. And they're like, ooh, I'm alone. I don't know where I'm going. To do that with an identity is something I never thought I'd experience. I didn't even know that was a thing. And I'll be honest, sometimes it's really uncomfortable for me now as I'm watching a lot of other people in my world make big strides forward. And I feel like I'm vanishing. And it's kind of freaky. So I lay back into faith and I ground back into intuition and into what Aya told me, into what all of my mentors told me. about what I'm meant to do in this life and realizing that I have a unique path and I am moving forward. It's just that my moving forward doesn't look like anybody else's. And it's one of the challenging things in my life of kind of being the only one very often in my world. I feel like, yeah, I'm the exception to that. This works for everybody, but not me. Or this only works for me, but not for anybody else. I seem to keep finding myself as like the only one and grounding back into feeling like that's okay. That's all right. And in a way, I'm kind of trailblazing, at least in my world. Nobody else I've talked to has a shared experience of this. So I'm exploring and I dig into my love of adventure and into my stubbornness that I will not allow this to be the thing that breaks me. And digging back into faith and digging back into surrender and acceptance of saying, cool, day by day, show me what to do, show me where to be, and I'll do it. And that carries me through.
Your story is one of the most grandiose stories of transformation I may have ever heard. And some of the lessons that I'm hearing come through in what you're saying that I think may be really applicable to anyone listening who experiences a smaller version of this or their own version of this is that one of the key elements is really to surrender and to go into that which is uncomfortable in order to enact that radical transformation. And that was something that was so pertainable to me on my path as well. The amount of times I've gone into just the deepest, most painful parts of my human existence. In the beginning, it felt like emotional cutting. But what I realized is I got more resources and more mentors and guides in my life that could help me through those things was that it became the transformation. And it's like the way into the transformation is through the pain and really
Yeah.
surrendering into that.
Yeah. That's, I find we live in a society that teaches us that pain is bad.
Mm,
If it hurts, don't do it. If it's hard, it's not for you. We see, especially in the spiritual communities,
mhm.
you know, if the door is closed, it's not for you. What kind of nonsense is that? If the door is closed, fucking knock on it. Don't just give up. If it's hard, maybe there's a reason.
Mm,
Maybe it's not supposed to be easy. Maybe you're supposed to learn something bigger than that. It's like going to the gym. If you only fuck around with the weights that you can lift, you'll never get stronger.
mhm,
If you stop running when your lungs start hurting, you'll never run a marathon. And I'm not saying, because we also have to learn when it's too much,
mhm.
when we're pushing too hard. It's a balancing act. You've got to develop discernment. It's like I tell a lot of my clients, stay in the fire, but careful. When it gets too much, you need to know when to back out. But if we back out all the way until we're comfortable, why would we keep going? Why would we keep changing and healing? So I did something to myself very seriously. Is I don't know if it was a great idea. Long time ago, I literally rewired my mind to run towards what I'm afraid of
Mm,
because I want this to be my first and primary experience. That's my reaction. Something scares the shit out of me, I gotta do more of it.
God, me too.
Yeah.
Me too.
Well, you're from the action sports world, yeah, of course, you guys thrive on it. How would you be able to do what you do? How would you be able to surf those monster waves if you didn't have that in you?
You couldn't.
Yeah, you'd spook.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I think that pain is a beautiful teacher, and I think that we shouldn't shy away from intensity or difficulty. Like, what would happen if we really leaned into it, but we leaned into it the correct way? That's when mentorship really helps.
The thing I love that you said was that you completely broke Your heart specifically completely broke in order to get put back together again. And sometimes that is the way of allowing it to completely shatter and understanding that the process doesn't just start and then have a resolution 60 minutes later. The process may start and it may have a resolution 2 days later, 2 weeks later, 2 months later. It may have a resolution 2 years later. But the fact that you're working on it and you're continuously going in and you're continuing to be guided through the process and making those pivots and bringing in new lessons, new love, new light for that transformation is what is really going to change everything. And in that process, you will see things like letting go of friends you've had forever that don't serve who you're becoming. Because those damaged parts of us love to hang out with people who either feed into that or are damaged in the same way. And when you begin to heal in those ways, those people don't resonate as much. And that may show up in the form of they're attacking your behavior, they're attacking what you're doing, they're negating your process. Or maybe they simply begin disrespecting you, or they take their own space, and it happens naturally that the relationships kind of fizzle apart. I had so many of my relationships fizzle apart. And you and I tend to have a lot of like interesting things in common. And
Mhm.
one of them was that I also always really considered myself a lone wolf or a chameleon of sorts. Like I fit into all the groups, but I didn't belong to any of them. I never got invited on the friend group vacations or anything like that, but I could go to the party kind of thing. And in doing all of this healing, it was like this deep rooted not accepting of myself that was causing all of that repulsion. And in that evolution, now I have the greatest friends I could have ever asked for. Like, sometimes I can tell where people are at by the reflections and things I hear from them. So, for instance, when I hear like, "Oh, well, most people don't have friends like that," or, "Oh, well, your friend group is so unique," or, "Oh, most women wouldn't act like that. Most women would get really jealous if they just met another woman leaving my house," for instance. And I'm like, to me, that is a direct reflection of where you are at and the kind of people that you're attracting into your life. Because it is where you are not fully healed that other people who are not healed are showing up and having that kind of space. And you can do the work to live a different way. And I commend you for living, breathing, sleeping, eating, all of the work and healing through that process and transforming through that process.
Yeah, thank you. It's fascinating that I really do live it. I'm immersed in it. I can't escape the work. It was so interesting. I was talking with one of my shamans in Mexico in her kitchen, and she was telling me about or the concept of integration came up.
Mm.
And I remember telling her, one of my mentors before ayahuasca was telling me, like, hey, just so you know, pay attention to integration. The big ceremonies are great, but that's like 30% of the change. You need to do the integration, right? And I heard that, I got that, and then wondered, how is it possible to not integrate a medicine ceremony? Because to me, I don't have a choice. I don't, the way that I look at it now, because of my devotion to this and because of my surrender to it, I don't see it as a choice. I mean, thank you for the compliments. I don't think I have a choice in this. I couldn't do anything other than what I'm doing. This is it.
For you, it's a
You know?
choiceless choice.
It is the choiceless choice. I can't run away from it. I can't not integrate, you know? I sat there with my shaman like, "Rebecca, how do people not integrate?" And she took an hour to explain it to me before I realized, "Oh, I'm built different. Oh my god, okay."
Mhm.
That's the problem. It's that I think that when we devote ourselves to transformation, and that is what this life is for me. I'm a healer through and through. I was ever since I was a child. My mom has stories of me working with other kids in school, and this is who I am. This is what I dedicate myself to. And I think anybody going along this path, if you're really serious, you want to see how far you can go, you really want to change things in big ways, I think it starts with you really needing to be okay with letting everything in your life go. Not that you need to, but I think it's important to be okay with it. And when you aren't, it shows you where you're attached. What a great game to play. Can I give you up? Love of my life. Would I be okay if you broke up with me right now and I never saw you again? Parents, friends, jobs, whatever. If we're attached to it, it owns you. If you're not okay with letting it go, like, yes, there will be a grief. If you love this person, that's a healthy thing. But I'm thinking, like, if you can't see yourself without this thing, it owns you. And it'll be a confronting issue at some point in your life. You're going to have to deal with it. And so as we go through, and that's how it became a lifestyle of constantly seeking what am I hooked into? What's hooked into me? Who am I hooked into? Who is hooked into me? And why? Why do I feel like I need this income? Why is it that to maintain my lifestyle? Why do I need to maintain this lifestyle? To be successful. Why is that my definition of successful? We can play this game a lot.
Yep.
And I know you do quite a bit,
Love
Barrett.
these why questions.
Yeah. Well, a lot of our conversations go into it of just like assessing what it is. And I love how just remembering our conversations with it was so fun. We had this conversation about colors.
Mm.
And why is it that you have a problem with a color, which is something I've never thought about before? Like, why don't I like orange? You asked me that. Like, why don't I like bright orange? I go, whoa, here's a new question that I never contemplated. What an interesting thing. Why don't I like it? What happened? What association, what perception, what identity do I have that is allowing me to have difficulty with a color or a person or an environment or an idea? And I think that's one thing that our current society in America, at least, and sorry if this background ice cream truck is making its way into your speakers. One of the things that I think that we do very badly right now as a country is allow ourselves to be triggered, is to allow ourselves to feel uncomfortable and go into it instead of out of it. It's like we're scared. Why? Because when we can explore it and we give ourselves time and we make it important, yeah, you're going to hit some hard parts. Look, in the last year and a half, I fell in love for the first time in my life. And I, before then, didn't even think I could experience it. I've only started experiencing positive emotions naturally in the last 4 years. No joy, no happiness, no nothing until then. I didn't even miss anybody up until a couple years ago because I never let anybody close enough. So here we go, exploring a new, amazing emotion, and then my heart shattering. And it felt like I was dying. And we don't want these experiences. So we stay away from them. We try to preserve things in our lives and hold on to them. And I think it takes a particular act of courage and of commitment to realize that your salvation that you're looking for is on the other side of the pain you're avoiding. And the greatest gifts you've ever imagined, actually, you can't even imagine them because where you are right now, what you see as life will be fundamentally different on the other side of your healing. So you literally can't imagine how good your life is going to be. But there's only one way to find out. And when we get into it and you realize, oh my God, I can handle this pain. I lived. I'm fine. I didn't die. Oh, whoa. My life is getting better. After my heart shattered, I reconnected with that partner, and our relationship now is on a track of being better than it ever has been. Actually, my relationships with everybody are improving. People in even more. All it took was a week of agonizing pain for a lifetime of having improved relationships. The ROI is just there. It's a no-brainer, you know? It's like, okay, you can either live with this pain for your entire life, or you can compress all of it into a few hours sometimes, a ceremony, or a week or whatever, and then it's done, gone forever, and your life is permanently upgraded. You do that enough times, and I think you'll get hooked onto it too.
Mhm. Well said. I love what you touch on in the essentially, like, there's no way to sort of for you not to integrate this. And I'm sort of a similar person as well, where I constantly walk around and I'm asking why? Why? Like, I'm still like a permanent 7-year-old. Like, why? Why do I feel this way? Why do I feel this way about the color red? Was specifically the conversation we were having. And for me, it why do I dislike red? And it actually was this whole correlation into my own rejection of my own femininity. Because red to me was this color of like sex and seduction and fastness and things that were part of me that were traumatized and taken advantage of when I was a teenager in my early 20s. And so I just rejected it. And then when I see red on other people, that rejection would hit in. That was ultimately, as I've been reconnecting with my own femininity in the last couple years, I've been learning to embrace red. And so I'm like, oh, yeah, I've been on this journey with red. And you were like, what does that even mean? And now I've been telling you about my journeys with pink and my journeys with purple. And I've been on a journey with all the colors, and I bet a lot of my friends listening who have also been on journeys with colors, and you may not even know it. And so I think it's so important to ask those self reflective questions. And that's why we hear of people, for instance, going to do the medicine and having no results. Like it's just a party for them, something they want to do on a Friday night, or they go and they get out and they don't have this life changing impact. And I think that's because a lot of this work needs to be done in the medicine. There are different answers that emerge when we ask these self reflective questions within the medicine. But you have to ask the questions. If you just show up and go, wow, what pretty colors, I'm here for the ride, you're going to have a very different Disney like experience as opposed to really looking into what's troubling you. Where are you blocked? What does that mean? How do you resolve it? What changes do you make? And so I think that's just you've really highlighted some wonderful things in getting on this journey and getting self-reflective, and everyone should be, and I use that S word sparsely, the should word, right? But really should be self-reflecting so that you're not spiritually bypassing. When we come up with these gifts of mediumship or channeling, or we get connected to source and spirit, or we've had the incredible ayahuasca experience, it can all be very easily bypassed if we're not continuously looking inward going, what am I attached to? I feel grab, I feel constraint right now. This is something we study a lot in my Buddhist teachings, and it's like, okay, I'm feeling grab onto that, and so why? And I love that you touched on we should not be avoiding our triggers. I think that we're losing a lot in society by going, oh, that triggers me, you need to stop. It's like I think that there's a time, some depending on how deeply one gets triggered, in which you may have the opportunity then to take space from that trigger while you begin to analyze your attachment to it. But it's important for us to be triggered because that shows us where we're still traumatized.
Yeah, and I love what you're saying here in terms of, like, what we're seeing now is, "Ooh, that triggers me, you need to stop." But in reality, it's, "Ooh, that triggers me, I need to stop." I'm the one doing it. It's my fucking wound. You might be the trigger, but it's not about you. What are you triggering? Sometimes you're triggering stuff that happened in a past life, as in it has nothing to do with either one of us in this life. How am I gonna blame you? You stop doing what? It happened back there. I'm carrying it. If I'm carrying a wound, that's my wound. These are my feelings. So you stopping is not going to prevent me from hurting because someone else will do it and they won't even know. And so now we're walking around, our societies walking on eggshells with each other because instead of learning how to handle shit, we just cancel it. And we think that's the same. It's almost like, I don't know if you've ever talked to a couple that's like fighting a lot, right? And they just have like a week or two where they're not fighting. And you ask, oh, how you're doing? And you're like, oh, we're great. You're not great. You're just not currently fighting. There's a big difference. Great would be you're healing so the fight doesn't happen again. So when she says that shit again, you just laugh. It's not even a thing. Like, cool, that doesn't hurt. But it's sort of like an emotional wound is, well, you look at your skin, right? And you look at your palm. You can tap your palm pretty hard. But if you get a paper cut, you tap it, that thing's gonna hurt. So then if someone brushes up against the paper cut, do you kill them? Do you cancel them? Do you attack them? Do you blame them? It's your cut. Why don't you learn how to heal that cut? Because once it's healed, you can high five someone as hard as you can and it will feel good. So that's what I think we need. I think we need to realize with more responsibility, more personal accountability, more gratitude. Thank you for triggering that in me. I didn't know I was carrying that. We don't know our wounds until they're triggered, but they affect us nonetheless. They disempower us. They keep us playing small. They keep us thinking limited ways. They keep on getting us to play in a way that keeps repeating the past rather than creating the future. So when someone triggers you, I would love the response to be, ouch, thank you. Thank you. I didn't know that was there. Now that I can see it, I can do something about it and I can improve the rest of my life because you triggered it. What a gift.
We are in control of our own suffering.
Yeah.
That's exactly the complexities there is eliminating your own, being able to eliminate your own suffering, because you will never be able to control what other people do. And so thank you for triggering me.
Yeah.
I like that. I like that. And so for anyone listening who has an interest in working with you or following you, keeping up with you, where do you like to hang out online and what is the best way to get in touch with you?
So you can head over to my website if you're interested about me, more my story. There you can also apply for a call to greatness with me if you're curious about working together. danmendilow.com. There, really easy. On Instagram, I'm also just at Dan Mendilow. Really easy. I haven't been super active on there this year just because I've been incredibly distracted with everything that's been happening in my life, but that's a very easy way to reach me, to contact me, to ask me any questions, or just to engage. I love hearing other people's stories, especially if it triggers something in you. It's, if some idea that this conversation has resonated with you or brought up a story. I love talking about that kind of stuff, and Instagram's a great way to reach me for that.
Perfect. Well, we will have those all linked up in the show notes. I thank you so much for joining me today, Dan. And for anyone listening, if you enjoyed this episode, please give the Modern Hippie podcast a like or a follow, whichever platform that you're listening to, and leave us a comment. Let me know what you loved about this episode or what it triggered in you or what you're going to do with the information that you heard. We would love to know how this podcast is impacting you. And so thank you so much for joining me today, Dan. I'm so grateful to share this time and space with you.
Yeah,
And
thank you, Barrett. That was a fun conversation.
oh, it really was. It really was. So thank you. And until next time.